Hi, Sam. What's up?
Back where I said, so I'm going to Marion Steps. Bean soup.
Okay.
That's 12 o'clock.
Okay.
7 o'clock. All right.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh my god.
Millions of
I'm gonna be
people
watching
use dating
these,
apps such as Tinder every day,
videos
seeking
while I
romance
draw.
and to have fun. Now, as expected in a world full of chaos, some of these dates go horribly wrong. But what happens if
Where's
one
my
of these
chat?
so-called
There it
dates
is.
led you to the mercy of a
I don't know if
sex-crazed
it's
cult,
too loud
with the
or
leader
not.
calling himself no other than the
Can you hear
vampire
me
sugar
over it?
daddy. With self-made videos created while evading the law, terrifying surveillance footage, and even a cult involved, the details of this case get more and more bizarre as time goes on. But what exactly happened
I'm
to
working
Sydney
on a
Loof?
YouTube
And
channel.
who's responsible for her disappearance?
Banner art.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Adrian, and welcome back to another video by Coffeehouse Crime. Today we're looking at the case of Sydney Loof. If you're new here, I post solved, unsolved, and strange cases weekly. So if that's your kind of thing, please consider subscribing to Coffeehouse Crime. So without further ado,
my tablet
let's
fell
begin
asleep.
today's video. Please grab yourself a coffee, pull up a seat, and sit back. This is the case of Sydney Loof.
There we go.
A thriving music
Oh,
scene,
yeah.
vast open prairies, spacious farmlands,
He's
and some
like-
very unique attractions. Of course,
Yeah,
I'm
this is
referring
what
to
I've
the
done
state of
so
Nebraska.
far.
Welcome to Cornhusker State, folks. Nebraska was once considered part of the Great American Desert.
It's like
but
only
through
the
many
like
decades,
middle
it has
section
since
will really
transformed
be
into a leading
seen.
agricultural
I'm
state.
using
Many modern
this
day films
template
depict Nebraska as an
that
area of never-ending
YouTube gives you
cornfields.
to show you how
And
the
yeah,
banner
that's
will
pretty
be
accurate.
seen.
According to CropWatch, over 1.8 billion bushels of corn were produced in Nebraska in
You'd
2021.
love to hug
Putting
it.
this
Well, of
into
course.
more understandable context, that's
I
around
don't think the
2.3
slime would really
billion
be able
square feet.
to not.
And in another sense, this means Nebraska's annual volume of corn could fill London's Wembley Stadium 13 times over. That's quite an amazing fact, if you understand me. If corn and corny puns aren't enough for you, Nebraska is also known as the
I'd
origin
say
of
the
the
slime
wooden
probably wouldn't be
sponge
able
and
to stop you
fire.
from hugging
Both of
it.
these things would be gladly accepted upon my table. Sydney Irene Loof was born on August the 21st, 1993.
Is the video too
to her
loud?
mother Susie and
Do
father
I need to
George.
lower the audio?
And after being born in Broken Bow, she moved to several other Nebraskan towns throughout her childhood.
I can make it quieter.
Sydney otherwise had a relatively normal childhood, full of life
I
and love
think.
for the outdoors. She was into several sports, including golf, basketball, and pole fishing. Now, unfortunately, while attending Nellie Oakdale High School, she was diagnosed with scoliosis, a condition that affects the curvature of one's spine. And as a result,
I hope
she had to
that's
drop
better.
most of
I
her
lowered it
hobbies.
like a
However,
little bit.
fishing out on the lake during
Let
the
me know if
weekends
that's
was
not
ideal.
enough.
Sydney also loved animals, and she put a lot of care into looking after her
You think
own
slime
cat,
hugs are
Lindsay.
nice? Nice.
Moving into her adulthood and graduating from high school in 2011, Sydney began to work at a local Menards store as a store clerk, which specializes in home improvement. Now, as I am sure
I
a
guess
lot
it
of us can
depends. It's
relate,
like, does it
Sydney
feel
wasn't too
solid?
sure what
Does
she
it
wanted
feel
to do
liquid?
with a future career. Menards was fine for now, but it didn't quite scream employment goals. This, amongst life's other 100 problems, would unfortunately leave her in a somewhat depressed state, and by November of 2017, her mental health had worsened. But thankfully, Sydney had an amazingly
Like a
supportive
jelly.
network. Not only were her family there to work through her issues, but
What
her friends
flavor
and
jelly?
colleagues such as Brooklyn the
The
Crystal
blue
were willing to help.
raspberry.
But in addition to her depression, Sydney also felt heartache, and with no one to hold close, her life didn't feel whole. Sydney was also romantically attracted to other women, and living in the middle of Nebraska, it made it very difficult for her to find another woman to love. With this in mind, she turned to the world of Tinder to find new connections. As most of you know, Tinder is an app that allows you to meet, hook up, and fall in love with other people. It was in the early half of November 2017 that Sydney swiped right to a woman named Audrey. Audrey approved her back, and with a mutual approval, the two started conversing. Most
Oh yeah,
messages
by the way,
shared
this
their interests and
documentary
hobbies,
YouTube thing is
and
like
about the
a
possibility of meeting up
true
for a
crime
coffee break
thing.
before going out for steak and gambling. And around 100 messages later, the two agreed to put their plans into motion. On November the 14th, 2017, and after asking Audrey if their date would exclusively be the two of them, Sydney made her way to her flat located in Wilbur, Nebraska. It turns out that their date went surprisingly well, and although not much is known on what happened that evening, it was good enough for Audrey to ask Sydney out on another date. Sydney accepted the offer, and the two made plans to meet up the following evening again in Audrey's home. But with work scheduled the following day, Sydney would have to get through her shift first before embarking on any other plans. At 6 p.m. on November the 15th, a surveillance camera captured Sydney Loof leaving Menards towards her own vehicle. Around half an hour later, she had returned home. Sydney then posted to
Another
her friends
Loof
on
cat.
Snapchat saying, "Ready for my date." And just after she had posted this,
Cat Loofs
Audrey
are
had pulled
pretty
up
cute.
outside of her home and messaged her on Tinder. Sydney read the message, put on her shoes, and left her home to join Audrey in the car. And after they got acquainted, the two then drove away into the winter's evening. The following morning, as the dawn cast itself over the homes and fields of Nebraska, a distinct chill captured the air. It was a Thursday, and most of those in Lincoln were preparing for another usual workday. But those at Menards were faced with a rather unusual predicament. Their sales clerk, Sydney Loof, had failed to check in for her shift, thus leaving the team down a member. Calling her mobile phone,
And
yielded
she's
no positive
dead.
results, as their calls went straight through to voicemail.
Thank
and
you,
shortly after this,
Streamlabs.
concerned colleagues notified her parents. But doing this would do nothing but cause further worry, as they too hadn't heard from her since the evening before. With the sudden realization that Sydney had not been accounted for since 7 p.m. the night prior, her mother immediately sensed that something was off. And so, in the afternoon of November the 16th, Sydney Loof was reported to police as missing. By the following morning, officers were ready to conduct a welfare check on her.
It seems a lot of the times people don't start missing persons investigations until it's like too late.
Officers found her purse and her glasses inside her home, which indicated it was likely she did not mean to leave. To add to this, her cat had not been fed, which was extremely out of character for Sydney. Sydney's family were beside themselves. It is easy for an outsider to rationalize why a stranger may have gone AWOL, but for those who really knew Sydney, this was agonizingly unusual. Unknown to everyone else at the time, but suspicion was growing over at Audrey's apartment too. The landlord who lived above had complained of a strong smell of bleach coming from the basement. In fact, it was so bad that one of the family members living above had started throwing up and reacting with hives. And to add to this, it was rather odd that the air conditioner was on in the middle of November. Within 2 days, officers were able to confirm that Sydney's phone had last pinged at a cell tower close to Audrey's home too. However, in this moment of time, they had no idea who she was. Authorities were very keen to try and find this so-called Audrey, as it was very likely that she was the last person to have seen Sydney before her sudden disappearance. They just didn't know how to find her, because nobody knew who she was. So, this is where an unexpected detective enters the scene, as it would be Sydney's good friend Brooklyn who helped solve the missing piece of the puzzle. Brooklyn decided she would try and find Audrey all by herself. She downloaded Tinder, replicated the same info that Sydney had, and went on the hunt. Eventually finding Audrey, she swiped right. And what would you know, Audrey swiped right back. After connecting, they exchanged numbers for a date. And as soon as Audrey sent her number to Brooklyn, Brooklyn gave this number to authorities. Finally, they had a number to work with.
This photo, posted on Snapchat Wednesday, was the last time anyone heard from 24-year-old Sydney Loof. Lincoln police confirm investigators have spoken to the
I wonder if
woman
this is gonna be one of those cases where she was just killed because gay.
Tara Gehring, a co-worker from Menards, says they let Loof's family know when she didn't show up to work Thursday. Loof's parents, George and Susie, tell us officers checked their daughter's place in Lincoln and that her SUV is still parked in the front. Investigators say they got leads that Loof may have been in Wilbur, Nebraska since her disappearance. Loof's friends all over Nebraska are helping spread the word via flyers and social media. Loved ones also sharing photos of Loof's tattoos, anything to get her home.
With Audrey's mobile phone number, authorities were now able to backtrack on this information, and it turns out that Audrey was not actually her real name. The woman who had dated Sydney was actually named Bailey Boswell. To add to this, her apartment, which reeked of bleach, was within range of the last cell tower Sydney's phone had pinged. Furthermore, this apartment was jointly rented with her actual partner, Aubrey Trail. The fake Tinder name used was a twisted play on the man's name. So, who exactly are Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail? Beginning this
colors,
question
I'm
with
guessing.
Bailey, she grew up in Leon in the state of Iowa. Bailey was supposedly a popular and friendly kid in a well-mannered family. And to add to this, she stood out at school as a gifted athlete, was talented in basketball, and was one of the fastest runners in her state. However, there is a dark side to her childhood too. Unfortunately, Bailey's father was murdered when she was a very young age, and after graduating from high school, she made the wrong turn in her life. Bailey began to hang out with the wrong crowds, steered towards frequent drug abuse, and all in all made poor decisions. Eventually, Bailey met Aubrey through Backpage, which is an online advertising website for sex work. She was looking for, quote, a sugar daddy in the local area. And through the following months, she inherited many of Aubrey's awful traits and behaviors. I say this because Aubrey is a real piece of work. Dating as far back as 1999, he has a long career of fraud, theft, and trafficking violations. One of Aubrey's main ways to swindle money was to write fraudulent checks to vulnerable antique shops, where he would then pawn these stolen items to the next one. Aubrey was manipulative in his sexual relationships too. He used cult-like tactics on women to fit them into his tightly controlled lifestyle. And I say cult-like because he was actually the leader of a cult. He saw himself as the sugar daddy vampire, and all of his women were referred to as his witches. He paid all of these witches $200 a week, so long as they followed his set of rules. Some of these rules
That's
included
not a lot of
contacting him
money.
every 3 hours, not talking to other men, and calling him daddy. Now don't get me wrong, these rules were terrible, especially the last one, but technically none of them necessarily harmed anyone. However, in the recent months of 2017, some of these newly recruited women were faced with a rule they simply could not accept. To become a witch, they would have to breathe in someone's last breath, meaning they would have to kill someone in order to qualify. Catching back up with our current story, at the time of Sydney's disappearance, Aubrey and Bailey were under court order to pay over $400,000 for conducting fraud in Kansas. They had a multitude of other petty crime charges too, but instead of paying them, they were on the run to avoid these payments. Officers were now able to connect Bailey and Aubrey to Sydney Loof, and although they had an idea of where to look for them, it was sadly too little too late. Although they had successfully obtained a search warrant on November the 19th, which was 4 days after the evening of Sydney's disappearance, they knocked at the door to find a silent apartment. Investigating the property, it appeared as if portions of several walls had been wiped down with bleach in an effort to clean them. And the landlord upstairs again highlighted that they could smell a strong odour of bleach coming from the basement in the days prior. Although officers actively began looking for Aubrey and Bailey, they had left without a trace, and in addition to this, it would take some time for their apartment to be thoroughly analysed. But what they learned of the couple over the following days was concerning at best. To begin with was their disturbing backstory, and then, days later, came the surveillance footage. Our footage begins on November the 14th, the day of Sydney's first date. At 5:08 PM, Aubrey and Bailey checked in to a hotel near Lincoln. This hotel not too far from Sydney's place of work. The following day at 10:25 AM, which was several hours before Sydney's second date with Bailey, a surveillance camera captured Aubrey and Bailey walking into a Home Depot in Lincoln. While here, they purchased a 12-inch hacksaw, 2 gallons of Clorox bleach, a folding tree saw, 30-gallon plastic trash bags, and a razor-sharp utility knife with replacement blades.
Isn't that
Around
kind of a
1
red
hour
flag?
after
Like,
leaving
if somebody
Home
was
Depot,
buying all
Aubrey
those
then
items
headed
from a
to
store,
Sydney's
don't you think,
yards,
like, it'd
where
be
Sydney
good
Loof was currently
to,
working.
like, flag
In
that?
fact, just as he enters the shop, he accidentally crosses paths with her. Sydney did not notice or realise this, because at the time, she had no idea who he was. While here, he bought some bleach and then left the shop 20 minutes later.
Oh
Another
my
moment of
god,
coincidence,
she faced
but
him
just
and didn't
as
even
Sydney
know it?
enters the shop, the same camera spots Aubrey walking from across the car park. And at 12:41, another surveillance camera captured both Aubrey and Bailey at the Aardvark Antique Mall, where they purchased food grinders, a weed cutter, and a folding saw. As Sydney's disappearance hit the 10-day mark, her family and friends were growing further concerned, and the longer this dragged out, the more likely something was seriously wrong. With most of the investigation kept under wraps, there was a lot of speculation around Sydney and her Tinder date. To begin with, who was Aubrey? Did she know where Sydney went? Even worse, was she responsible? On November the 28th, day 13 of Sydney's disappearance, both Aubrey and Bailey, who had vanished a week prior, were officially declared as persons of interest by authorities.
Cat no.
Now,
Cat
if you
no.
remember, I mentioned that this case
Cat no.
gets more and more bizarre as time goes by. And here's the first reason why. Just after being publicly declared as persons of interest, both Aubrey and Bailey would suddenly reappear. But they did this in the form of a Facebook video, on a page no other than Sydney Loofs.
That's like pretty much confirming that you're guilty.
Omaha and probably several other places. This is Aubrey Trail and this is Bailey Boswell. I guess y'all also know her as Audrey. But we've spent the last few days watching ourselves being slammed and crucified in the newspapers and the news and everything else, so we thought it was time we had our say. The Lincoln Police Department apparently wants everyone to believe that we're hiding, that we haven't talked to them, that we're avoiding them. You've already crucified us in the newspapers. You've already crucified us on Facebook. You know, in America, I sure thought it was a trial first, but I guess not. You've heard all of this stuff about my criminal history. All true. As far as I know, I'm not wanted for anything. I'm a person of interest, and I'm not really running from anything. I pray for Sydney. I hope she's found soon. Um, I wish the family the best. I'm sorry that she wasn't with you on Thanksgiving, and that's pretty much all I can say for now. So this has pretty much cost me my life, and I appreciate that from the Lincoln Police Department and the FBI and all those other agencies. Here's Bailey to tell you whatever she wants to.
Hi, good morning. I'm Bailey, Audrey on Tinder, and this really isn't about me. This is about Sydney. I met her on a Tuesday. We drove around Lincoln, smoked weed, had a great time. We hit it off. Picked her up the next night at her house. We drove around, smoked weed again. I went to take her home, and she asked me to drop her off at a friend's house. So, I mean, I haven't heard from her since. I guess I just want the family to know that I'm truly sorry and I didn't have anything to do with this, and I hope that Sydney is found very soon. She is a sweet, amazing girl.
I hope also that Sydney's found soon. We wish the family the best. We're sorry you're going through this. The police department is going to do what suits them best. Yeah, I know that's coming from a criminal, so you'll believe what you will as far as the police department is concerned. But as far as I'm concerned, what they're chasing us around like dogs, I wish the family the best. I mean, no disrespect to anyone. I wish Sydney the best. But as far as the police department, you.
Yeah.
This video backfired on them quite heavily, and after trying to publicly maintain their innocence, Aubrey went on to create another video to rant about people's comments, freedom of speech, and America.
Hi folks, Aubrey Trail here. Few little things I want to talk about. I've been watching all day. I just watched the news. That's why I'm making this. But I've been watching a lot of posts and comments today. So far today, from the comments, we have apparently murdered this lady. Just curious, are we not allowed to tell our side of this? And of course, again, I'm just a criminal, so you're going to believe none of this, and I guess it's really irrelevant because we've pretty much decided to turn ourselves in and see where this goes. If I'm a thief, I'm a thief, but I'd be goddamned, I've never killed anyone in my life. I've never hurt a female in my life. So take that for whatever the hell it's worth. I'm a crook. I'm a thief. Have been all my life. Okay? But I'm not what you're trying
Like
to
how
make
his
me be.
defense
You
is,
say we're
I
disgusting.
didn't kill anybody, I just steal from them.
Discuss. I don't think we're the disgusting ones, because what the fuck happened to America? Trial, freedom of speech. What happened to not guilty until proven guilty? And this is what I look like. You say we're hiding. This is what? Blue eyes, teeth, brown hair. Hi. Not hiding at all. Have a nice day.
Now seriously, this guy has a serious case of verbal diarrhea. and although his video was more than 11 minutes long, there's not much more to take out of it. He did accidentally switch the video camera before turning it off though, which instead showed Bailey's underpants. However, their time on the run wouldn't last much longer after these posts, as by November the 30th, both Bailey and Aubrey were successfully tracked down by authorities. They were found in a dingy motel in Branson, Missouri. Since there was currently no evidence to charge them over Sydney's kidnapping or murder, they were instead arrested on charges related to fraud. And in their bags, officers found maps, sleeping bags, hiking shoes, and an elaborate plan to escape to Mexico. After their arrest, the two further claimed that they were innocent. But while they were getting used to their first few nights in a jail cell, the FBI were collecting their mobile phone data to better understand where they had been. They could then use this
Let me
information
guess.
to see where
They
they
had
may
been
have hidden
everywhere
Sydney's
the other
body
phone
were she
pinged.
to be dead. And tragically, the worst of these concerns were to chime true. On Monday the 4th of December 2017, 19 days after her disappearance, parts of Sydney's body were found. By comparing the time, duration, and location of pings off nearby cell towers, investigators found that the journeys of Aubrey and Bailey's phones had stopped along a windswept corner of gravel roads found north of Edgar, Nebraska. It was about an hour's drive west of Aubrey's basement apartment. And after
Isn't that
authorities
messed up?
took to the
That,
barren
like,
landscape,
anyone
it took a
could
few
kill
minutes to
you
find a black
if
trash
they just
bag
felt
in
like
a
it.
ditch.
It's like we
This
trust
bag
people
was
in society that they like
as over the
won't
next
do
day,
that.
officers would
But
find
like
13
anyone,
parts of Sydney's body, with one part
the
still
old
missing
lady
to
at the
this day.
grocery store could, you know,
Cuts on her body were
like.
consistent with a thin-bladed, fine-toothed saw, which was much like one that Aubrey and Bailey had purchased. A total of 16 crime scenes were observed, all of which either had
At least
pieces of
that's
Sydney's body
feeling
or other items
sometimes,
such as tarps, rubber gloves,
especially in
sweater
America.
suits, trash bags, pajamas, and a bleached bedsheet. Whoever had killed Sydney was bent on having the evidence scattered as much as possible. Her driver's license, Visa card, and phone case were found along Highway 41, and on Highway 15, officers would find her car keys. And of course, all of these routes matched Aubrey's and Bailey's trails.
Good morning, I'm James Johnson.
And I'm Emily Zhang. Today is Tuesday, December 5th. After more than 2 weeks of endless searching for a missing Lincoln woman, her family took to Facebook to announce the news.
The body of 24-year-old Sydney Loof has been recovered. 3 News Now reporter Shantae Passmore is live in studio with the latest.
Just heartbreaking for that family right now. While Loof's body is found, the discovery also leads to more questions at the moment. This morning at a news conference, we're expecting to get another update from the FBI, Lincoln Police, and other agencies. The announcement stunning on a Facebook page dedicated to spreading awareness about the 24-year-old's disappearance. Loof was reported missing November 16th. Her cell phone last pinged in the Wilbur area. 51-year-old Aubrey Trail and 23-year-old Bailey Boswell remain in the Saline County Jail as persons of interest while this investigation continues. As for that news conference, it starts at 9 this morning. We'll bring you updates on air and online at 3newsnow.com. Live in the studio, Shantae Passmore, 3 News Now this morning.
And so it goes. The harrowing discovery of Sydney's body prompted a devastating reaction across all of Nebraska, and more specifically, her family and friends. On December the 11th, 2017, the Loof family decided to hold a private funeral for Sydney.
Oh, I
at
forgot
Grace
the
Lutheran
tummy.
Church,
I
a place
completely
which she
forgot the
visited many
tummy.
times in her past. Despite the rather clear evidence that Aubrey and Bailey had something to do with Sydney's death, they still claimed their innocence for several weeks to come. But on January the 24th, almost 2 months after her discovery, cracks to their original story would finally start to form. And this is where Aubrey claimed full accountability over Sydney's death. In a phone call the very next month, he admitted that he had killed Sydney, but also that, apparently, it was entirely accidental. Over the next several months, and amongst all the other charges of fraud, Aubrey would make several confessions of varying severity. However, his stories would always differ from the last. To begin with, he claimed that he was the only one to murder Sydney, but next, he claimed that she had accidentally died during a third date with Bailey. The man then claimed that she was accidentally killed when the trio participated in a sexual fantasy. He had allegedly choked her during sex, which then accidentally killed her in the process. In a fourth confession, Aubrey went on to claim that his job was to make movies for special kinds of kinks. This is where he had paid Sydney to choke her in an adult movie, and again, he had accidentally killed her in the process.
In the process, Sydney Lou died. There was lots of violent sex involved. There was strangulation involved. It was not supposed to go as far as
Come June 11th, 2018, both Aubrey and Bailey were charged with the first-degree murder of Sydney Loof. And to add to this, they were also charged with the improper disposal of human remains. And with the death penalty legal in Nebraska,
Improper disposal of human remains. Don't different cultures have different like burial things?
That there should be an eye for an eye in Sydney's death, he would actually plead not guilty, and instead wanted to give his own side of the story during his trial. Eventually, Bailey did the same thing. As Aubrey's trial began, many items from the crime scene came to light. These included handcuffs, rope, a dog collar and leash, and several sex toys. Pieces of electric wire were found near some of Sydney's remains, and multiple pieces of apparel, such as pants and gloves, were found. Several women from the so-called vampire sugar daddy cult also came forward to share their disturbing experiences with Aubrey. Ashley Hills, who was one of Aubrey's former girlfriends and cult members, testified that she'd lived with Bailey and Aubrey for quite a while. She told the court that Aubrey was the ruler of a sex cult full of mentally unstable women. Aubrey called these women the witches, and Bailey was known as the Queen Witch, which essentially was his second in command. The two apparently often talked about murder, torture, and the occult. But Aubrey would stick to his guns and deny such allegations. Just before the beginning of the jury selection process, he only pleaded guilty to the improper disposal of human remains, again pleading not guilty to Sydney's murder. And what would happen next was entirely out of the blue.
Please be seated.
Bailey is innocent and I curse you all.
Stop recording.
Just as a witness was preparing to take the stand, Aubrey shouted, "Bailey is innocent and I curse you all," before he stabbed himself in the throat with a sharp object. He was then rushed to the hospital, and although he missed parts of his trial, he would go on to make a full recovery. Aubrey was stitched up and taken back into custody, and how exactly he had managed to acquire an object sharp enough to cut his own throat, it is still not fully known.
Yeah, aren't they like in a secure courtroom with like police everywhere?
Attention, his trial would go on without him in the courtroom, and furthermore, the judge asked the jury to disregard his outburst. And no surprise, but on July the 11th, 2019, the jury took less than 3 hours to make their mind up on Aubrey. He was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human remains. Fast forward a little over 1 year, and Bailey too was convicted on all 3 counts in her own trial. But although her convictions were identical to Aubrey's, the two would receive different sentences. On November the 8th, 2021, Bailey Boswell was sentenced to life in prison, whereas on June the 9th, 2021, Aubrey was sentenced to death by lethal injection. The 3-judge panel served a sentence calling his crimes cold, calculated planning. The difference
Why did she not get the death?
Deciding that her actions did not meet the standard of exceptional depravity needed for punishment.
Okay.
One of the most damning pieces of evidence to this case were the letters found between Aubrey and Bailey before their trials. Although these letters were hidden in some sort of cryptic language, investigators were able to crack their Morse code, in which both of them openly admitted that they had murdered Sydney. So I guess the lesson here is, well, don't try to outsmart investigators, especially if you're missing a few tools in the box. Bailey is now an inmate at the Nebraska Correction Center for Women, located in York. And as for Aubrey Trail's trial led to the end of his trail. He is on death row at the Tecumseh State Correctional Institution. Now, I want to wrap this case up by highlighting what kind of person Sydney was. Back in 2016, when she learned that a colleague was living rough, she did something that a lot of us wouldn't do. She offered him a place to stay while he found his feet, and during this time, she taught him how to cook, how to save money, and how to look after himself. When asked why she was willing to do that for a colleague she barely knew, Sydney responded with, "Everybody needs help at some point in their life, and I feel as if I can help him." And I feel that pretty much encapsulates Sydney's demeanor. She had a lot of nurture and love to give to those around her. She outwardly supported all of those who walked into her life. And Audrey was
It's always the nice people. It's always the good people that get murdered, man.
Aubrey had entirely different plans. If you plan on using dating apps such as Tinder or otherwise, please research the best ways on keeping yourself safe, as you can never be
telling people where you're going and who you're with and stuff.
And that pretty much wraps up today's case, folks.
I don't think I could use Tinder. I've downloaded it before and I've swiped and talked a little bit. But one time I was gonna meet up with a dude
This
I
case
paid for the
recommendation
hotel
came
room.
from
I bought
9145,
pizza.
so
All he had to
thank
do
you,
was
Morty.
drive there.
If you guys have any
He
other cases
immediately
to recommend,
entered the
please leave
room,
them in the
took the
comments
pizza,
below
laid
or
on the
send
bed,
me
and
an
started
email.
watching TV and
So,
like
what are your
didn't
thoughts
talk
on
to
this
me.
case? Do you use Tinder or any other
After
sort
an
of dating
excruciatingly
platform?
awkward
And
like
how did
half
you find
hour,
this
45
episode?
minutes, I asked him
Please
what
share your
his thought
thoughts in the comment
process was,
section
and
down
he was
below.
like,
And as always, folks,
"Oh, I'm
we'll be back
tired.
again real soon for
I'm
another
tired
video.
from work." And I'm like,
Until
"Then
our
why
next
did you
arrives,
come
please
here?
remember to look
Waste
after
my
each other
time
and
and
stay
my
safe.
money." I gave him the
Thank you.
pizza
Goodbye.
and told him to go home. And then he was like, "Man, I drove all the way here." And I was like, "And for what? For what reason? Why? You're ignoring me. You're just sitting there.
Millions
You
of
do this at
people
your
use
own
dating
house.
apps such
Like,
as Tinder every day.
who comes to a hookup just to
Hello?
chill,
I'm
just to
starting
sit
this
there,
vlog.
not even talk?"
There we go. Let's out to the camera over here. Look. Hey, over here. What's that?
The prophecy is true.
What did you feel you would accomplish by killing them?
Nothing.
Nothing, eh?
Yeah, what's this called?
And what caused
Family
you to
Horror.
pursue
The Strange Case of Cameron Rogers.
I don't know. This is Cameron Rogers, and this surveillance camera shows the moments in which he awkwardly confesses to murdering his mother and father. Through this case, it will become evident to you that Cameron is a very disturbing individual. But what caused him to commit such heinous actions to those who loved him the most? And what were the horrific events which unfolded on that fateful day? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my friends. My name is Adrian, and welcome back to another video by Coffeehouse Crime. Today we're looking at the case of Cameron Rogers. The surveillance footage capturing Cameron's confession is quite notorious in Canada. But what exactly was the story behind it? And
This is
by
a
the way, did
Canadian
you know
crime.
that I post solved, unsolved, and strange cases here weekly? So if that's your kind of thing, please consider subscribing to Coffeehouse Crime. We're diving straight into this one, my friends, so please grab a coffee and sit back. This is the case of Cameron Rogers. Today, we once again travel to the vast and rugged lands of Canada. Canada is a country that is often covered here on Coffeehouse Crime, but Canada is actually one of the safest countries you could live in. When it comes to landmass,
One
it's
of
the
the
second largest
safest,
country
but
in the
like
world,
also
only coming
they're
after Russia.
crazy.
Many mountains and woodlands populate its terrain, and almost half of Canada's land is covered in forest. With thanks to its relatively small population, if you stray too far from a town or city, you'll find yourself to be entirely alone with nature. You will also find distinctively modern and progressive cities in their urban hotspots. And today, we're keeping it urban by visiting the country's capital, Ottawa, a very beautiful city nestled on the banks of its namesake river. Ottawa holds a population of 1.5 million residents, many of which are migrants, which of course is evidence that Ottawa is a very desirable place to live. And here we find the Rogers family, in the riverside suburb of Rideauvieux. Small in size, the Rogers consist of Dave and Merrill Gleddy Rogers, along with their 22-year-old adopted son, Cameron Rogers. In the year 2016, Dave and Merrill were older parents, aged 69 and 63 years old. They adopted Cameron in their 40s, but they didn't let their age stop them from any activities that any younger parents could do. Dave Rogers was an Ottawan through and through. He was born and raised here, graduated from a nearby high school, and went to Carleton University, in which he obtained 2 degrees in political science and journalism. This education eventually led to Dave being hired by the Ottawa Citizen, a local newspaper outlet, where he gladly dedicated his entire professional career until retiring 37 years later. He was known to be a man with a positive outlook on life. No matter what the awful things he had to witness and report on through his line of work, he never complained and always got the job done. Merrill, on the other hand, was tough as nails. She was born into a military family in Alberta, and carrying on the family tradition, she joined the Canadian military after achieving a linguistics degree at the University of Ottawa. Due to her name being mistaken for a man, she was enrolled onto the men's combat training, and, as it turns out, she became one of the first 4 women to complete the entire combat course, even going on to help design future training for recruits. Dave and Merrill would one day meet at a cycling group in Ottawa, and fast forward 2 years after this, they had married and started their adventurous lives together. The pair would often travel to France and loved the country dearly. The two of them were bilingual, which unfortunately is a dying skill in Canada. The couple had always wanted to start a family of their own, but for reasons kept private, they never conceived any children, and instead they went down the avenue of adoption. Now, the Rogers family were perfect applicants for adoption, and it didn't take long for them to receive an offer either. That is when, in the year 1994, they welcomed the newborn Cameron into their lives. The couple naturally took to parenthood, and those around the family noted they were entirely devoted to Cameron. They centered their lives around him and loved him unconditionally. They always gave him their full, undivided attention. So when Cameron began to struggle at school, they suspected that maybe he had some learning difficulties. Their son was eventually diagnosed with ADHD and expected autism, but this diagnosis didn't affect their love for Cameron in the slightest. They were simply better able to support him and his needs. Cameron grew up seemingly happy, and his parents gave him many fantastic experiences and opportunities. Some of those being trips overseas, cruises,
Yo, I
and
wish I
plenty of time in
experienced
Canada's
that as
great
a kid.
outdoors.
Damn, man.
But after graduating from high school, Cameron didn't know what he wanted to do with his life.
Same.
Nor did he seem too bothered to find out.
Same.
This worried Dave and Merrill. So eventually, they convinced him to enroll into college. Where,
Oh, what? They're
just
gonna
like myself,
push him
he
into
studied
things he doesn't
mechanical
want to do, and then he's
Although
gonna
Cameron
snap.
agreed, he saw this decision as his parents trying to control him, when in
Yeah.
reality, they were trying to set Cameron up for a bright future. You see, they were getting older and wanted to make sure that Cameron could provide for himself. Although his education would help build a career and provide financial support in the future, Cameron also wanted to get a part-time job while studying. But Dave and Merrill didn't think this was a good idea, and instead, they wanted him to focus on his studies. In their warm-hearted nature, they therefore decided to make a generous compromise. Whatever he wanted to buy, he could get for free, in return for some gardening work or household chores. But Cameron absolutely hated this arrangement. He didn't like the idea of having to specify what exactly he was buying all the time. Granted,
Oh,
Dave
yeah,
and Merrill were simply
privacy.
trying to help out, but this didn't mean much to Cameron. He didn't have any desire to complete his course anyway. Resentment followed Cameron. In his mind, his parents controlled his every move, and whether that be his studies, his finance, or his job, that feeling stayed with him. As a result, arguments frequently broke out between him and his parents, often resulting in shouting and screaming between the three. But despite this, nothing ever changed. It was always the same old story. This frustration grew over time, and although Cameron could just about control these emotions below the surface, it was only a matter of time before these feelings would boil over. Even still, the consequence to all of this would be far greater than anyone could have ever imagined. November the 20th, 2016 began like any other day. The Rogers family had been invited to a birthday party later that afternoon. They agreed to attend and furthermore promised to bring a party dish over in return. But as the afternoon arrived and the clocks hit their invitation time, the Rogers family were nowhere to be seen. Hours passed, and come evening, it was apparent that they were not going to make the night's events. Friends reached out to ask if everything was alright, but there was no response. And as the days of silence began to mount up, relatives and close friends started to worry. The Rogers were a reasonably private family, so no one felt enough urgency behind their silence to call law enforcement for a welfare check. Maybe they'd taken Cameron out of town for the week. Saying that, some of the neighbours did recall seeing a dim light coming from one of the bedrooms at night, but maybe it was on a timed switch. However, after 9 long days of silence and 120 miles away, a very awkward yet harrowing phone call was made to 911.
That's 911.
Hello?
Hello.
I would like to confess to a murder.
Okay. Well, so where are you?
I actually, I'm on a street,
Mm-hmm.
in Montreal. I don't know where that street is.
Well, you need to know if you want me to send somebody.
Yeah, that's true, Wayne. I'm near a parking garage.
Okay, you need to be more specific. I need an address or intersection.
I'm going to find the street name. An address. Oh, that might work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go up to the corner of the street, see the street name.
And who did you kill?
My mom and dad.
Okay. Where do they live?
They live in Ottawa.
And what's your name?
My name is Cameron.
Cameron.
Cameron Rogers.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
22. Okay. Are you gonna stay on the corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will.
Okay. I'll send somebody to go and talk to you and just see what's going on. Okay.
The caller was Cameron Rogers, and throughout this phone call, it's evident that he wasn't fully sure what he was doing. Neither did he realize the gravity of the situation. As they collected Cameron from the side of the road, officers were dispatched to the home of Dave and
Yeah, I don't know if
as
with
they got
his
there,
autism
that night,
and
they found
other
the gruesome
neurological
discovery of two
problems,
bodies.
if
The two
he
had
fully was
tragically been
aware
stuck behind a
of the
shed in their
consequences of his
backyard.
actions.
Dave found inside a suitcase and Merrill inside a tarp. And due
Well,
to
I
Canada's
don't
harsh
know.
winter,
If he
both of
did
their bodies
wrap
had
them up
frozen
and
over.
stuff,
Needless to say, but
maybe
police
he knew
immediately
somewhat.
took Cameron into custody before charging him with
I
the
don't
murder
know.
of Dave and Merrill Rogers. Interrogation started the very next morning.
Maybe in the moment he couldn't like control himself.
Hey, so how you doing?
It's a terrifying
You're
thought.
okay? Yeah. All right. Do you remember my name?
That's honestly something I'm scared of.
First time, right? Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like
So my name's
having a
Teresa.
child
I'm
that
with
I
the
can't
Ottawa
control,
Police.
that eventually is stronger than me and stuff, and they become violent.
So I met you for the very first time today, right? Just
Cameron seemed confused throughout his questioning, but the interrogator, Teresa Kelm, took a light and understanding approach to him, and it never seemed as if Cameron was lying throughout his answers.
what did you feel you would accomplish by killing them?
Nothing.
Nothing, eh? Okay. And what caused you to just do this?
I don't know. It was.
Although Cameron was stuttering, he never hesitated to tell the interrogator what she wanted to know. He just seemed entirely aloof throughout the process.
Yeah, bro.
I don't know what made me do it. It was just like I don't.
So, what exactly happened to Dave and Merrill Rogers? And what had caused Cameron to murder his loving parents? It turns out that on the first day of the family's silence, Merrill was preparing herbs, which she would add to the dish she was planning to take to the party. With Cameron nearby, she had asked him if he could cut the melon for her, which he begrudgingly accepted. The family had one of their usual arguments the previous night, and unfortunately, even after sleeping, Cameron was still in a bad mood over it. Cameron took the melon and laid it down on the chopping board. Selecting a knife from the drawer, he began to cut away, all while ruminating over the events of last night. He was sick to the teeth of being told what to do, and wanted to be able to live his life his own way. While staring down at the knife, slicing through the melon's flesh, his mind deviated into the realm of disturbing thoughts.
And this is
He
where
began to
usually
fantasize about how
regular
easy it
people,
would be to turn to his mother
they
and
realize
use
it's
the knife
a
on her.
bad thought, an
If his
intrusive thought,
parents were
and
no
wouldn't
longer
act on
around,
it.
they could no longer control him,
But
after all.
he probably doesn't have the same level of self-control.
This is one thing I'm just trying to understand. So you're cutting melons, and what was your mom doing?
She was like doing something, some kind of herb thing. I don't know what it was. It was just she was grinding herbs or something.
Okay. And how was that morning? This was around 11 o'clock. So what was going on that morning in the house?
I don't know. I mean, like, what was?
Did you have an argument with your parents, or?
Well, I mean, the whole upstanding or not upstanding, the whole like disagreement about school and work and all that was just hanging over me. And I mean, I guess, like, I mean, we've had arguments before.
Okay.
And heated, yelling ones, and I guess just at that time when the cloud broke, I was chopping a melon.
After 50 minutes of absurd deliberation, Cameron's decision was finally made. He wandered over to the garage and collected a wooden stake. Although the stake's purpose was never intended for violence, that would unfortunately all change. He returned to the kitchen, walked up to his mother and stabbed her square in the back. Merrill screamed out in pain as she fell to the floor, and although this stake was not sharp enough to kill, it did cause significant injury and pain. Cameron's actions would not go unnoticed, as David heard his wife screaming from across the house. The frightened man stood up and rushed towards the kitchen, only to find Cameron standing above Merrill. Before he could fully comprehend what was going on, Cameron thrust the stake into his father's chest, puncturing his lung in the process. And grabbing 2 knives from the kitchen counter, Cameron took both parents in turn, stabbing them multiple times. Hours passed, but Merrill was still on the floor of the kitchen, groaning in pain. Cameron had stayed outside of the room to wait for her to die, as he couldn't bear being with her during that moment.
All right. And your mom, you said she was in the kitchen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And where was your dad?
He was somewhere else now, so I don't know exactly.
Okay. Can you just explain to me how your dad, did it both happen in the kitchen? Okay. How does your dad end up in the kitchen?
Well, when I did my mom, he came running, and then I did him.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And how long did it take?
What do you mean?
Like before your mom, like how long did you...
Well, my dad didn't take very long, but my mom took a long time.
Okay.
That's when the phone rang in the kitchen, and not wanting to be suspicious, Cameron picked up the phone. He heard the voice of his uncle, Graham, asking to speak to his sister. Cameron replied back with a lie, telling his uncle that Merrill was ill and resting in bed, and that everything was fine. But all in the meanwhile, just meters away from the phone, Merrill lay dying on the floor.
And it was really hard because she was in pain, and I wanted it to stop, and I couldn't make it stop. And it felt so bad because...
Fuck, this is sad, dude.
And I wanted her not to be in pain, but I couldn't stop it. And it went for the whole night.
And what?
It took the whole night for her to die.
And how do you know that it took the whole night?
I don't know exactly, but I mean, I went to my room, and she was still in pain. I could hear her, but then in the morning, it was done.
Although Dave would pass away almost instantly, it took hours for Merrill to die. Her final moments were sure to be in agony, both physically and emotionally. She had been betrayed by the son she had raised and loved, a son who was upstairs waiting for her to pass. If Cameron had called 911 after his assault, perhaps he could have saved her life, but this is something we will sadly never know. His next plan of action was to get rid of the bodies, or at least move them. Cameron then proceeded to make his way downstairs, wrap their bodies in a suitcase and tarp, move them behind a shed at the end of the garden, and then clean up the kitchen.
Why don't we talk about how did they get to the outside?
I put them there.
You put them there, okay. And when did you put them there?
After they died.
Okay. And how did you get them out to the back?
I had to, I dragged my mom in a tarp.
Okay.
And then I put my dad in a suitcase.
Okay.
And then pulled him out.
Okay, and how'd you get him in a suitcase?
Well, I sort of rolled him into it.
Okay. All right. Did you have to do anything to get him into the suitcase? Or?
Well, it wasn't like a perfect fit. Like, I didn't like make him like fit.
Okay.
Cameron's parents owned a steam cleaner, which, fortunate for him, he then used to clean the blood off the kitchen floor. He then discarded the knives and the broken steak, dumping them in the family's waste bin in the garage. Cameron's strategy to conceal his crime...
I think after
was
this one I'll
almost
switch
as
to
his decision
videos that are a
save his
little
parents'
less dark.
lives. Despite his cleaning efforts, he had no plan or intention to evade the law. He simply didn't want the extended family to see their bodies. Cameron stayed in the house for an entire week after murdering his parents, and during that time he spent most of it in his bedroom, only entering the kitchen to grab some food or a snack. Throughout his week-long hibernation, he then pondered what his next move would be. He knew that he couldn't stay in Canada, as no doubt he would be caught, but perhaps if he could cross the border, he would have a chance of starting a new life. Much like the decision to kill his parents, these thoughts were naive, impulsive, and thoughtless. But it's precisely what he would attempt to do. And so, after a week of deliberation, he emptied the contents of his mother's purse, took all the money he could, and left.
Right. So we're just going to try to figure, how did you get to Montreal?
Took the train.
Oh, you took the train, okay. And then how did you get from your house to, which train station did you go to?
Tremblay.
Tremblay Road, okay. And how did you get there?
I drove.
You drove whose vehicle?
My mom's.
Your mom's. And why didn't you just drive to Montreal?
Well, I have to pay for gas.
Okay.
And I mean, I didn't know if I didn't know, I probably could have, but I mean, if I had to pay for more gas, I wouldn't really be able to pay for more gas.
Right, okay. So you then took the train to Montreal?
Yeah.
And when did you arrive in Montreal?
At 8:30 on Monday.
Once in Montreal, Cameron purchased a bus ticket to New York. However, while at the border, he declared that he was looking to move to the US, and was therefore asked to present a visa, which obviously he could not produce. You see, Canadians don't need to produce a visa if they are simply visiting the United States. So, telling the officers at the border that he intended to move was very strange, and indicates how little he thought through his plan. Lost and alone, and with nowhere to go, Cameron wandered around the streets of Montreal trying to decide what to do next. The day was getting long in the tooth, and Cameron, he was tired. So at 9:15 p.m, and 8 long days after murdering his parents, he decided to call 911. Everything that Cameron would later confess to was...
Man, I'm really torn on this guy deserves to be punished, and his mind couldn't comprehend slash,
and as for motive as
like, control himself.
There strangely wasn't one. Even during his interrogation...
It's like, the way he was crying when he was like, I didn't want her to suffer, but she was suffering and stuff. It's like, I feel bad, man. Because it seems like he just couldn't control his, like, intrusive thoughts. You know, like the limiter that usually people have that's like, okay, no, it's like you don't do that. You might think it, but you don't do it. It's like he didn't really have that. He just had the thought and then lost control. So I feel extra sad for him.
About to do it and then not to do it.
Okay, alright. What was causing you to want to do it? Why is it you're thinking you wanted to do it?
I don't remember.
Okay. Alright.
Following, well, all of this, Cameron was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, to
Damn,
which he
bro.
would plead not guilty. His defense reasoned that it was a spur-of-the-moment crime, and that his diagnosis of autism meant he had diminished responsibility for his actions. This is despite him saying he only had slight autism during his interrogation. Cameron's defense didn't go well. His confession had highlighted that his crimes were not spur of the moment, since he had carefully weighed up his actions for almost 1 hour before proceeding. Leaving his mother to suffer on the kitchen floor for several hours instead of calling for emergency help would also...
I guess they determined that he did
Cameron
think
also
about
attempted
it.
to hide the bodies, made an effort to get rid of incriminating evidence, and had even tried to flee. All of which is evidence that he knew his actions were morally wrong. Cameron's trial began in December of 2018. The prosecution
He may have
opened the trial
known
by
that his
making
actions were
statements,
morally
and
wrong,
next,
and may have
despite
tried to
Cameron's
cover it up
defense
after the
statement.
fact.
But this is
But
when,
he
out
clearly
of the blue,
couldn't control
Cameron told
himself,
his lawyers
right?
that his father had sexually abused him for most of his life. This statement changed everything about the trial, and if true, it would change his defense team's direction quite immensely. But the question was, why had he not told them any time sooner? The trial was therefore declared as a mistrial, and ultimately the jury were dismissed, meaning that the judge would make all decisions on Cameron's fate from here on out. But while his defense team tried to get this new information out of Cameron, this is where his story crumbled, and he admitted that he made the allegation up in a panic. The trial continued without a jury several days later, and once this began, Cameron was subjected to 24 victim impact statements from the friends and family of Dave and Merrill. These statements came from people Cameron had grown up with, and those who loved him very much. To avoid proceeding with the trial, The judge gave Cameron Rogers the option to plead guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, to which eventually he resigned. Cameron pleaded guilty to both, and therefore was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole for the next 20 years. This means that technically Cameron could be a free man in the year 2038. His family members, who are not related to him by blood, do not welcome this sentence, and instead they now fear for their safety in the future.
I think everyone wants to hear from
Cat,
Cameron why.
my cat has decided to sit between me and the keyboard again.
I think either from family, from the community at large, they want to hear why. Why did you do this, Cameron? I think the fact that he lied, made
Let's
these allegations against his father, shows some of his character, shows some selflessness on his part.
This a solid color.
Try to get away with this.
So we got a lot of blue, red, and purple going on.
I fear
So
he is released.
yeah, a lot of this going on, a lot of this. So maybe do I want a contrast or like a gold?
Family in the southern U.S.
That's really dark.
all very scared for us. Because
Contrast, but then that color's too dark.
I'm not sure that I fully agree with Graham here, as, at least to me, it appears that Cameron requires psychological evaluation and support much more than he deserves to be feared.
I agree with this. I feel like they are assuming that he has more control than he actually does.
Highlights a man who cannot fully comprehend or grasp his actions.
I agree.
To add contrast to this, Cameron's actions were not instantaneous, as he spent almost an entire hour weighing up the idea, enough time to realise that his plans were cold and heartless. It is a very interesting discussion point, and one that I'm sure will bring many opinions to this.
He might know it's wrong, but I don't think he fully could understand.
As the sun goes down, we remember our real victims to this
I
case,
feel like
Dave and Merrill.
he lacked the part that allows you to stop, you know?
But Dave and Merrill were there to do their best and give him a second chance. They adopted Cameron as a newborn child, and loved him unconditionally through every good and bad moment of his life. From the very first time he could stand up, and all the way through to graduating high school, they were there for him every step of the way. Dave and Merrill devoted 2 decades of their lives to Cameron, but their love and care would be thrown back in their faces in the most violent and cold way possible.
we're happy this is resolved. This is a horrible family tragedy. We never expected ever to find ourselves in such a situation.
Through their friends, their family, and the church, Dave
I want
and
to
Merrill
add a
were
lot
so
more
loved.
to this
And
over
many of
time,
those
I
who
think.
also loved Cameron will now forever resent him.
I just
Cameron
don't
will have the
know.
chance to be released from prison at the age of 42.
I want to
And although
do
authorities do believe that he
like a
can be
silhouette
rehabilitated,
of a
he will
graveyard.
first have to live the next quarter of his life.
So I'm gonna look for a reference real quick, and I'm also gonna change the video.
Those who loved you the most.
I'm gonna change the video to more of a happy
Thank
one.
you so much for watching another video today by Coffee House Crime.
Shut up,
If
shut
you
up,
found this case
shut up,
interesting,
get out of here.
or you learned something new,
Get the fuck out of here. Sorry, the cat is in the way.
then please remember to like the video.
Okay, let's
if you haven't yet.
just
Wrapping it
some
up here, folks, I'd love to hear what you
meme
think in the comment section down
compilation.
below. Do you think 20 years is enough time behind bars? Or do you think psychological evaluation is more pertinent to this case? Thank you again for
I
watching,
think
folks.
psychological evaluation.
Oh, look at my phone. What's this?
Take that pizza to go, bitch. Oh, you like to fight? Ain't nobody wanna fucking fight.
Yeah, I'll make it.
ANTM TV. It's Fashion Week in Paris. Can you say magnetic?
That's foul.
We're gonna use
a
dark,
fajita.
like umber.
I'm thinking maybe $40.
Give me the bag. Hey, hey, what's in your hands?
There's nothing in my hands.
What's in your hands?
Nothing. I
Open your
swear.
hands.
All right.
Now, break and ship resistant. Ready? Idiot, you didn't throw it hard enough.
Oh my God.
motherfucking damn sandwich, but ain't nobody eat this part, bro.
Looks awesome. Thank you. I don't know. I don't know how good it is. But
Oh my gosh! What is that?
What is that? Wow, wearing lotion is actually a fantastic thing for you.
Bro, where am I gonna put mine now?
Well, there's a couple over there. You can like put that.
This is my dog Gus. I recently trained him how to bite balls, so don't fuck with me. He's very good with intruders. He rips their nutsack clean up. What are you looking at? No, don't you do it.
She's little.
oh god. That's one talented doggo right there. Cat, why are you... Why... No. Go sit on your pillow.
What are you doing, making a TikTok? No one wants to see that, Michael.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put some more gravestones around.
Yeah. This feels bright.
Here you go. Enjoy that oil. Are you filled with oil now? How do I get oil in this thing? Oh, there's a fill button. Oh yeah, that's a lot easier. Okay. My
Period.
Nice.
Oh shit. Damn, Grandma. Looking extra thick. About to be a murder victim. At least I got handicap part.
That guy talks like I do. Can't speak straight. Nice.
My balls are quite dry.
Okay.
Let's go, let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Yeah!
They did it! Yay!
Oh my god, guys! My water disappeared!
Actually, I think I might combine this part and lower it. I'm gonna do like a couple different layers of this. Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna do a similar thing. It's got like hills or whatever. It's kind of like what the background for the stream is. Sort of like a different color scheme thingy.
Right there. What the dog doing?
Don't worry, I got this. I'll just fix it real quick. Nothing happened.
Gaming is intense, but talkies are seriously intense.
There are too many of them. What are we going to do?
So this filter shows you your most searched thing on the internet every day. So if you scroll in, you can see that my most searched image is
Sorry about that if you heard that. That's my grandfather.
Oh my god. Why does it go 4 legs?
Why does it look like a sheep? The face is so
Damn, bro. The kid's got a fucked up laugh.
If you eat this piece of pizza, you don't make it into heaven.
Well, I'm the only Spider-Man. It's me. Only one. There ever is and ever will.
Julián, un momento. Hey.
And she died inside.
You've been using your ears wrong.
How do I use my
I don't wanna
ears
type this
wrong,
anymore.
man?
Can you do it for me?
Y'all, the streets is crazy, y'all. Somebody done put a bounty on this lady head.
Lol, get it? Because bounty is like short for like taking a hit out.
I'm going to try to make this as family friendly as possible so that I have peanut.
Oh, what is that sitting over in the corner of the mouse out here in the shed? Gonna have to send the puppy after it.
Here we show you a close-up of a frog croaking.
Good morning, Krusty
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
This is just a regular little gummy bear, and I've decided to destroy it. To do this, I just have to get a vial, and I'll add a small amount of something called potassium chlorate. After that, I just have to heat it up until it all melts into a nice goop. At this point, it should be pretty good, and I can carefully drop in the poor little gummy bear.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
And we put one up there.
That powder said sheesh.
Put a pizza and then put a sign on the door that says, "Scream Shannon, your pizza is here." And don't ring the doorbell or knock. Our grandma is sleeping. So the delivery guy did it.
Nice, nice, nice. You gotta respect the commitment, right? Alright, so I think that's okay for now. I think I need to add more. I don't know what else to add. But it's like
Just a
here.
few minutes, though, it was already melting.
Let's get a
like
look
everything
at
else
what
in
like
life,
YouTube would see.
all good things must come to an end.
Let me just like put this up here.
Excuse me, miss? I was wondering if you wanted to do like an interview.
So like
Okay. I was just gonna ask you, what is the scariest
desktop.
thing you've ever like been through?
No, I don't want the square. Fuck off. Fuck off, square, fuck off.
In 2018,
YouTube would see like
my cat
this
ran over
portion.
a sheriff in town, and
So it'd be like it'd be like this. And then everything else would only be seen on TVs. I want to add more to it, but I think it's probably good enough for now.
It's just an ordinary crabby.
I still have to make the channel I put it on.
Seriously, this can't be my life, bro.
I think I might add a color fade though, actually. Like, I think the bottom.
Excuse me, sir. We're trying to find
I'm
my
gonna make
friend.
blue.
Could you announce it? Lou.
What's the guy's name again?
Lou Sassel.
Attention customers, Lou Sassel. Lou Sassel, come to the fitting room. Your party's waiting.
Thank you. All right, that should do it.
He should be in a minute.
Okay, sweet. Oh, maybe he's with Hugh. Is he with Hugh? His brother Hugh. He's with his brother Hugh. We could call that.
Hugh?
Yeah, Hugh.
What's his last name?
Janus.
Okay. Attention customers, could Hugh Janus please come to the fitting room? Your party's waiting. Would you please come to the fitting
You
room?
like that? Can we make it look like it's becoming
Try
nighttime?
his dad. He's with his dad.
What's his dad name?
D.
One more try.
All right, one more try. He's adopted though, so the last name's different.
Okay.
Snuts is his last name. D.
Well, customer D.
Snuts.
All right, Dane, I got a spicy.
Sorry, I didn't want to skip that one. It's just annoying me. I hate these. Skip blue. No.
Thank you.
Skip.
He's definitely try his dad. He's with his dad.
What's his dad?
I hate these. I hate these. I hate these. I don't think they're funny. I think they're cringe. So that's some like fire effects.
Wait, what do you mean small? This is pretty average.
Ed, this is pretty average, right?
Actually, it's undersized. Oh no, man, that's huge.
We'll use like this color, and we'll get like a droplet or something, or a spray, and we'll just like put it around, and then we'll get some yellow.
What is it? Ah.
Stop throwing the bag at her right now.
We'll do the low, and then put a little bit of a motion blur on it.
Chili Philly versus the unmatched power of the sun. Let's go.
Yo, my name is Silly Billy.
Yeah, something like that. X40.
You good? Friend?
Whenever you buy a used car,
How long have I
always
been
pay
live?
attention to the gaps in the door. This is how you could tell if it's
Over
been
an
an
hour.
accident or not.
Everyone
Finish this a little bit faster than I thought I would. But I think I'm just gonna end the stream. I don't really have anything else planned going on. Wasn't even really planning on streaming. I just figured if I'm drawing this, might as well. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you, Sam. I'm gonna peace out.